Okay. Hello. So there. Oh. Yeah, that's it. So glad to make it with us today. Appreciate you making this a priority. We had a good Labor Day weekend. We're looking forward to the fall. I mean, it's still 90 plus degrees. But I'm looking forward to the fall too. But I'm really excited about the program today. We have a good speaker, W.C. Bradley Company, the fascinating history and even their current organization. So we're looking. Before we get started, I'd like to ask John Harold to lead us in an invocation, and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
Father, we're grateful. We're grateful because we're with a family, our job, community, our homes, our stuff. We're grateful to be a part of an organization such as Rotary, be a part of the club founded 100 years. We're blessed and grateful for the friends beside us. Concept conveyed in the word written by your apostle Luke. It is more blessed to give than to receive. It's echoed in our mantra, service of self. We found Luke's words in Acts. Father, encourage us, implore us, obligate us to not only write these words and speak these words, but to demonstrate through our own acts, service of self.
Thank you, Stephen. So we have a lot of guests with us today. Grateful to have you. That's Kelsey.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. It is my pleasure to introduce our guests. Please stand when your name is called and remain standing until all names have been introduced. Our first guest is Glenn Clements, guest of Bill Bolton. Next, we have Darren and Lisa Nunn, guests of the club. Eric Moose, guest of Jake Jones. Ty Wood, also a guest of Jake Jones with C.W. Bradley. Next, we have Meg Kelsey of the City of LaGrange, guest of Trip King. Then we have Bill, also of the City of LaGrange, guest of Trip King. Then we have Nathan Gaskin, LaGrange City Council, also guest of Trip King. And lastly, we have Steve Smith with Smith Design, also guest of Trip King. So welcome.
Thank you, Kelsey. We'd love to have you all visit us anytime, so please, can't wait. Like, visit, we have great programs coming up. September is a huge month for LaGrange Road, so we have a lot to do in the weeks ahead. We do have birthdays and anniversaries to bring to your attention, so I want to share those with you. Bobby Carmichael's birthday is September 5th. Kay Minshew is September 9th. Connor Smith is September 9th. And Beth Hudson is September 10th. So please keep those folks in mind. We have some club member anniversaries. Gerald White, it's been with us 2 years. Sandra Heath Taylor, 17 years. And Randy Nix, 29 years. So great to have those anniversaries to celebrate. And then wedding anniversary, Mark Oliver and Jay are celebrating 37. That's good. As I mentioned, September is a big month for us. We do have a handful of announcements. Let me start with Carrie Bias to talk about a recent grant service. Carrie?
So I'm here to give you the Rotary Foundation update. We submitted, as I mentioned before, we submitted the grant application to District Rotary in June this year. And it was for the Trip County pre-K students in the Jungle Books program, where we give books and bags to all pre-K students. We were just granted that amount, $1,750, along with $1,000 we were actually purchasing those today. I talked to Gail this morning, she was ordering all of that. And so we'll have it stamped. If you look on your table, you guys have seen it before, but what we do is we package all of those books into bags and distribute those to classrooms and while we're there, we get the opportunity to read to students. So if you look on your table, there's a little line right here for Rotary members and your phone number. If we have a huge problem with it's overbooked, I'll handle that one. We can talk, but if you guys could please fill those out. And if they don't get filled, it will start popping. Some heavy hitters backing up if we need to, but I appreciate that. Just let me know if you have any questions at all, feel free to give me a call. Thank you.
If you haven't volunteered to do this in the past, I would encourage you to do so. It's really meaningful. We're helping Trip County kids learn to read, so it's really important work. I do want to let you all know that the week ahead is officially Community Service Week. So historically, this is a week where civic service has been recognized, specifically Lions Club, Rotary, Kiwanis, and Optimist clubs have all been recognized. There are many groups in our community doing good work, but this week highlights the work that's over here. And at the city council meeting next Tuesday at 5:30, Mayor Edmondson will give us a proclamation to recognize our civic service. So if you're available and interested, please come and do it. We'd like to have some Rotarians here representing the club. Couple of other announcements. Scott, maybe you want to make an announcement about the Rotary 5K.
Volunteers will be here to meet with top 1
you, Scott. So again, 100th-year anniversary, we come along, you're going again. So this is a big night. 25 years from now, where will we be? So I don't mean to depress everybody. It's something to look forward to, 100 years. So anyway, the gala, I want to remind everybody, if you haven't bought gala tickets, please take them in and do so. I sent out a link yesterday that you can buy tickets. Love to have everybody here at the gala. It should be a great event. So please go ahead. Don't wait till the last minute if you don't find anybody else tickets. I want to mention our sponsor commitments for the gala. So our goal was to have in our sponsor commitments by this Friday. And the reason for that is because we're doing a commemorative booklet to recognize our 100th year. And we'd love to take this as an opportunity for those sponsors who've been involved in the club for a while to recognize former members and former presidents, people who've meant a lot to your company, who've been part of it. So if you haven't already done so, think about it, please consider making a $15 donation to support us. Let Ken know if you have any questions about it. He's been tracking it. And appreciate your help with that. Happy dollars. A lot to be happy about. Sue, we'd like to share some happy dollars. Thank you. What was sad.
Good afternoon. I want to invite all of our Rotarians, particularly for 9/11. Remember 9/11 on Monday. The Sony United States Bishops Conference on the bill that they've asked particular pastors and also bishops to offer an annual food fast, which means to pray for our first responders. So I think here 6 years ago, and now I inaugurated. So here's just an annual a great reception of the police. We honor our first responders, that's our police, our EMTs and firefighters, and the range between county of West Point, Hogan. So please, if you mark your calendar next Monday, it's at 7 a.m. 7 p.m. Thank you. God bless.
Happy dollars on Tuesday at 7 a.m. Hopefully we'll have Blair, who's the president, as our featured speaker. And thank you to Jay Jones for making that happen. Really is special to have the president of the bank join us. So we hope you all will register and be there at 7 a.m. Thank you.
Let's Celtics at a third. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for 30 minutes of sleep. As I mentioned, we're excited about our program today. I'd like to ask Jake Jones to come up.
Thank you, President Tripp. It is my pleasure to introduce Pace Halter for the Rotary Club of LaGrange. Pace joined the real estate division of W.C. Bradley as president and COO in June of 2017. He brings a broad base of real estate and finance experience to for 16 years prior to joining W.C. Bradley. He was president and CEO of the Halter Companies, a development and investment company he founded in Atlanta. Prior to that, he worked for BB&T, Bank of America, as the assistant vice president managing significant real estate construction and development loan portfolios. Pace graduated from Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida, where he received his bachelor's degree in sociology and business. He earned his MBA with a concentration in real estate and finance from Georgia State University. He served as the 2020-21 chairman of the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, chairs the Columbus Museum Building and Grounds Committee, and holds a seat on the Columbus Market of Synovus Bank Advisory Board. He also is on the Columbus Economic and Development Corporation and the Columbus Film Fund Board of Directors. Please join me in welcoming Pace Halter to our Rotary Club.
Good afternoon. How's everyone?
many people have heard of W.C. Bradley Company? Wow. Wonderful. Now, the question, how many people know what we do? So I've been given 20 minutes to cover 38 years worth of history. So buckle in. We're going to move quickly through this and see if we can get it all done in time. I appreciate the opportunity to come up and speak today. We'll work through this presentation as quickly as possible, and I'll try to leave a little bit of time at the end for any questions that you all may have. As I said, Bradley Company is 138 years old. I'm going to start at the beginning. We're going to go through this as quickly as we can. Founded in 1885 by Mr. Bradley. That was when he first moved to Columbus, born and raised in Alabama, made Columbus his home. I've highlighted as I go through here, kind of in bold, the items that I think are probably most relevant throughout our history. Starting first in 1888, ironic to our introduction, Mr. Bradley and Mr. Gumby founded Columbus Bank and Trust and Third National Bank of Columbus, both predecessors to Synovus Bank. In 1917, Mr. Bradley purchased what was the beginning of the assemblage of ultimately 4 plantations just south of Columbus. He still owns those properties today. And I'll share a little bit about the Bradley Farms as they're known now when we get to that point. Perhaps the most significant part of our history occurred in 1919. And that's when Mr. Bradley and Mr. Woodruff acquired the Coca-Cola Company from Canada. They put together an investment syndicate. They went up to New York and bought the Coca-Cola Company for $25 million. Today, that makes up the bulk of our balance sheet. It's still Coca-Cola stock, as you can imagine, with a 1919 basis. So puts us in a bit of a unique position. In 1925, Mr. Bradley acquired the Columbus Iron Works. That is relevant only because that ultimately becomes the birthplace of Charleston Grills, one of our largest consumer products divisions. Today, that building is the Columbus Visitors and Trade Center, right in the middle of downtown. It was ultimately given to the city. As I alluded to earlier, in 1830, they combined the charters of the 2 banks into today what is Synovus, and continues to operate as it has since then. In 1943, Mr. Bradley was taken over by D.A. Turner, who the Turner family, many of you may know, are still very actively involved in the company today. Ultimately, in 1947, Mr. Bradley would pass away, and D.A. Turner would take over the company as chairman. Again, as agricultural started moving west, Charleston ultimately moved from what was originally a wood-fired stove production company into the grill that you know today. The middle picture there on the right is actually the very first Charleston grill that was produced at Columbus Iron Works. Ultimately, in 1973, Bill Turner, Mr. D.A.'s son, and Mr. Bradley's only grandson, would take over the company where he would continue to run it for decades. Most people know Bradley currently for Mr. Turner because of his long duration in the chairman's seat. He also sat on the code board. In fact, we maintained seats on the code board until, I believe, 1997, when Mr. Turner ultimately was. In 1985, obviously, simple math will tell you we celebrated our 100th anniversary. If you've been down to Columbus and come to our corporate office, you may have had an opportunity to tour our corporate museum. In celebration of the 100th anniversary, the company commissioned artists from around the country to produce original works of art that hang on permanent display in our corporate building. The only caveat was it had to have something to do with Columbus. So it's a very impressive collection. If you get a chance to come down and encourage you to come and visit. In 1987, we had a fairly significant change, which is when Mr. Turner stepped down and his son Brad and his nephew Steve Butler took over the company. Brad stayed with the company for a number of years. Steve, in particular, sat as chairman for 30 years and just recently retired now about 8 years. Charleston made a couple of significant acquisitions, as you can see there, most notably In 1998, we acquired the Lamplight Farms Company out of Menominee Falls, Wisconsin. You'll see here in just a minute, ultimately, Lamplight would acquire the Tiki brand, what many of you know for backyard porches, in addition to string lights and fire pits and a number of other outdoor products. In 2001, we also acquired the Zevco company, predecessor to, obviously, the maker of the Zevco from childhood, and ultimately a very large brand with a number of different subsidiaries underneath it. In 2004, the real estate division acquired Eagle and Phoenix Mills, which at one point was the third largest mill in America, at 2 million square feet in the roof. An interesting story about that: when Mr. Bradley passed away, there was no forethought for any type of estate planning. And so to deal with the estate taxes, there were two options that the company had: either sell the mill or sell Coca-Cola stock. They made the decision to sell the mill, pay the estate taxes, and we ultimately reacquired it in 2004. Today, it's 90 apartments, 88 condos, and some driveway retail. The part that is left, the majority of it's been torn down as it fell into disrepair. And then obviously continuing on our long relationship with Synovus Bank in 2004, you'll see on the bottom right, we completed what today is the center, which is Synovus Bank's corporate headquarters. More to come on that in just a minute. In 2008, as I mentioned earlier, Brad Turner retired. Steve Butler stayed on as chairman, but a momentous occasion when Mark Olivier came into the company as CEO, the first non-family member to run the company in the company's history. Mark would stay for almost 13 years, retiring just a couple of years ago, which you'll see in just a minute. In 2017, my first year with the company, we opened a new corporate headquarters for Charleston and Columbus. And then unfortunately, Bill Turner, really the patriarch of the family, passed away in just a matter of weeks after I joined the company. And probably one of my biggest regrets, I never got a chance to meet him before he passed. I literally missed an opportunity by about a week, but did not have any chance to meet them, which is unfortunate. In 2018, as I mentioned, Steve ultimately retired and John Turner came in as chairman. John is Bill Turner's son. John just recently stepped down. We have moved to a new generation of leadership, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. In 2019, we opened a project called The Rapids in downtown Columbus. The one you see in the middle there. It's a 226-unit apartment project right on the river. It's the first project that we've opened, a new project that we've opened in Columbus in about 30 years. So it was really meaningful to really get downtown going. In 2020, Mark Olivier retired, and Jim Hillenbrand, who you see on the bottom right there, who was our CFO, came in as CEO and still is today. In 2021, we opened the Hotel Indigo as phase 2 of our Riverfront Place project. And then we also sold the Zevco brand to an outdoor company called Rather Outdoors, a private equity. As I mentioned earlier, as you'll see there on the top right, in 2022, we began construction on the project that you see, which is Synovus Bank's new corporate. So having delivered their building 20 years ago, they felt that we felt it was time for the building. That's a 230,000 square foot building. It's got brick for retail, about 191,000 office. We expect to take all we actually turned the first 3 floors over to them here in about 2 weeks, and they'll finish that building out in about the next 9 weeks to move into that building. And then, as I mentioned earlier, John Turner retired earlier this year. And in April, Christopher Ball, you see on the bottom right, came in as chairman. Notable because it is a generational change for us. Christopher is the first of the 5th gen to run the company, again, having just taken over earlier this year. And then later this year in October, we'll celebrate Charbonneau's 75th celebration in Columbus, and we're very excited about that. So we've got a little bit more stuff to touch on. I'll dig in a little bit deeper. Some of the companies share not a ton, but a little bit more with you. Corporately, these are our values and our beliefs
I always like to share this with folks because I think it speaks and tells a lot about the company. We are a faith-based company, as I said, we have 167 shareholders in the company, still entirely privately held, this pay. About half of them are in Columbus, the rest are scattered around, mostly southeast, but these are really the values and our beliefs that drive kind of what we do on a day-to-day basis at the company. When you get into our divisions, we function today primarily as 6 operating companies. Charbroil, which I alluded to earlier, many of you know as a grill manufacturer. Well, there's a really pretty timeline right there. But anyway, I'll show you some of our products. These are brand new introductions, so you're one of the first to see this new line of products that are just now being rolled out. Charbroil is historically known as a gas grill manufacturer. That still is the majority of their business under the Charbroil brand. We also own under Charbroil a brand called Oklahoma Joe's, which makes competition quality smokers, like what you see here. They are based technically out in Utah, although corporate is run from Columbus in the Charbroil headquarters. About 90 days ago, we made our first major acquisition in over a decade. We bought the Danson's brand, family of companies out in Scottsdale, Arizona. A name that, like Bradley, many people probably wouldn't recognize. Their largest brand is Pit Boss. Many of you know the pellet brand Pit Boss smokers that you see. They also own a safe company called Sherlock. They own about 4 other smaller subsidiary companies, all of which were acquired in the acquisition. So we are literally going through the integration of the Danson's family. To put it in context, that acquisition almost doubled the size of our consumer products. Tiki, which I mentioned earlier, again, lives under the Lamplight brand. Most known for kind of the backyard torch, but they do a number of other things as well. That's what the other timeline was supposed to look like. But they do make string lights, they make fire pits, and they're adding outdoor heating. Think about those whole vertical heaters, they're adding that element to the lineup this year, as well as a number of other new brands. Based in Menominee Falls, Wisconsin, this is one of our fastest growing divisions. Tiki has been really good for the company. We own a small backpack apparel company out in Utah called Badlands. Predominantly known for Western hunt apparel, they are slowly growing into the southeastern market. Very, very high impacts, outstanding camo apparel. Badlands, again, one of our smaller companies at the moment, but very quickly growing. Coming east, very, very good. It's great. We're excited to have Badlands moving in the direction. Real estate, which obviously is near and dear to my heart. So this is Hotel Indigo, which again opened just over 2 years ago. A little bit more detail on the real estate division as a whole. Arguably, at least when I'm talking to my compatriots at the company, the oldest division in the company. We do have our roots all the way back to its founding. Mr. Brownlee was acquiring property for various reasons. That continued through D.A. Turner, and then ultimately Book Turner took over as well. We made a conscious effort in the mid-2000s to really refocus our efforts on downtown homes, which had fallen into disrepair, was not overly safe, and frankly just needed a lot of support. We started acquiring assets in downtown really from a protectionist standpoint. It was largely philanthropic in nature, and we still have a number of assets in downtown. It's still very much a focus for us today, but it is, I'm proud to say, very stabilized and doing quite well. And then we jump forward to 2020. I joined the company again in 2017 with the stated goal of trying to grow our footprint here. Since then, we've added a major acquisition just north of Charlotte, North Carolina, on a 55-acre mixed-use development that will start up there. And then we've also added, or in the midst of adding 120 acres right here in the range, which will start on next year. I referenced Notice's new corporate headquarters. This is what that building looks like today. Well, last week. It's coming up, as I said. We'll turn the first 3 floors over today.
does have a ground floor grocery, which will be our first downtown grocery store in Columbus. And then 190,000 feet office on top. Adjacent to that, this is a project that we have named the Currents. We have the Rapids and the Currents on the river theme. This is a 226 unit apartment building. It's got about 15,000 feet of ground floor retail. And we'll start turning this building over and putting tenants in March of next year. We'll turn the building in March, April, and May. And return as we go through the year. And we'll start leasing this building for the next year. I referenced the original plantations that Mr. Bradley acquired way back when. Today, as I said, that's known as W.C. Bradley Farms. This is a rough breakdown of how that farm works. It's just under 41,000 acres, about 30 minutes south of Columbus. Of the 41, 38 and change is contiguous. The rest of it is scattered around, and you can see how the pie chart there, how the property is used. Largely recreational. Be a tremendous surprise, with the second largest piece being timber. A lot of timber property out there. We do actively farm about 700 acres of it. So we have cattle, goats, we have a lot of horses, chickens, etc. And then we have a large organic farming operation. And then we do lease out about 1,700 acres for third-party farming. And also, peanuts and usual stuff that you can find them down. And then I'll finish with this rendering, which is our Charlotte project. So again, it's a 55-acre site just north of Charlotte, North Carolina. Ultimately, we'll have a grocery-anchored retail center, 6 out parcels, almost 700 apartments, 60 townhomes, and 100,000 foot likely hotel. This project, we hope will start next year. It could start in 2025. But first major development that we will have done outside of Columbus and almost 20. With that, I'll stop, and I'm happy to answer any questions with. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
They are servant leadership. How that is woven into the fabric.
Yeah, so it's, well, two things. One, the book is called A Journey Towards Servant Leadership. And if you haven't read it, I would highly encourage you. It is the best non-business business book I've ever read at company. So he talks a lot about his faith and how that drove them to build the company that we have today, and the spirit of servant leadership. And I thought in the opening comments and the prayer about being servants and servant leadership, it is the underpinning of everything that we do at the company. And it's not just at the company. The uniqueness of what Mr. Bill, as everybody loving was that pervades throughout the community, whether it be in church, or civic organizations, or anything else. This concept of servant leadership is pervasive throughout the community. But it really is, it drives what we do at the company on a daily basis in all divisions. And he was a true unique leader. Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about your upcoming project?
Sure. So we are in the midst, we have acquired about 80 of about 115 acres at the corner of South Davis and Upper Big Springs, so directly across from Nutwood. Bowery Lake sits in the middle of that property. Ultimately, we will sell off a majority of that property for single family development. So we keep a small piece for a multifamily project. Again, obviously the city is planning a park across the street at some point. We hope that will be a nice amenity for us as well. We've long wanted to come into this market. It's convenient, and we believe it's a great market. I'm really excited about that project. I say we've closed on it's about 80 acres. I'm looking, I should have introduced Ty Webb, who's our development construction manager. I think we closed on about 80, and we've got another, okay, just under 90. We've got about another 25 we'll close in a week and a half.
In the interest of putting Indigo downtown,
We'd love to have Indigo. Great, if we can find the right site. Now, we've had really good success with Indigo. If you're not familiar with that brand, just a little bit of background, we specifically sought them out. The concept of Hotel Indigo is centered around what they call the neighborhood store. So the uniqueness of Indigo, if you've ever been in one, you've never been in two that are the same by design. The hotel is largely design driven. Rooms and the box are very standard. It's all about everything on the inside, and the uniqueness of the neighborhood story is it's built and designed to tell about all things local. So if you come to Hotel Indigo in Columbus, you're going to see a lot of the Coke history, a lot of the Fort Moore history, formerly Fort Benning, a lot of our textile histories. It's all woven throughout the finishes, all over the hotel, lobby, restaurants, rooms, etc. We specifically sought out Indigo. They're a great brand. We've had a great relationship with them. And we would love to put a hotel. And we have this, I pause because we have this ongoing debate. So I sit on our Visitors Convention Bureau board. We get a report at every board meeting. May have mentioned this to some of you all. In some prior meetings that show all the competitive markets around Georgia. And Grange is always one or two in there, and Columbus is 4 or 5 or 6. And so we do not manage our hotel. We have a third-party management company, and every phone call I have with them, why can't you find us a hotel at the Grange? So we would very much like that. But no, we would welcome the opportunity. Yes, sir.
Rather high level of growth that, leads to excitement for that. You have the insights or something that can tell us about what stage of what's going to be around. Help those that are making the panic stage.
Yeah, so I think, well, I should back up. I don't think it's a Lagrange issue. I think it's a treatment issue. And I don't mean issue in a bad way, right? And you're not alone in the fact that it's grossly underserved from a housing perspective, right? Depending on the report you want to read, there's somewhere between 30 and 40,000 people that drive into this county on a daily basis for work, which means they can't live if they're living somewhere else because there are no options. Again, you're not alone. That is a problem across the country. There is a national housing shortage, and I'm not talking multifamily or single family. I'm just talking housing in general of any type. And I think that's what you're saying is people have started figuring out the significance of the housing shortage here. And it has become a real focus on how do we get into what, one, is a very good market. 2, has great proximity to Atlanta and the airport. Kia obviously is, the easy one, but also I would argue that Auburn and Opelika as well. Auburn is a huge driver. I mean, it drives the market in Columbus. So I think you are uniquely positioned to be a bit of the hole in the donut. And I think what you're saying is a bit of an influx around that. I don't view it as a bad thing, right? I mean, there's always NIMBYism and a bit of concern when you see growth or more particularly rapid growth. But I think if you're prepared for it, deal with it appropriately, it's not a bad thing. It's going to happen one way or another. To me, it's the opportunity to embrace it and control it in the right way. But I don't think it's a bad thing at all. And I think if done well, you get a better product at the end. Yes.
Due to the expansive nature of the business that you have scattered all over the place, have you ever given any thought to the transportation structure that connects your businesses, Georgia cities, the world in general?
Yeah, so obviously, particularly on our consumer product side, logistics are a huge part of what we do, right? We'll bring in, I don't know what the final number would be, but somewhere between 40 and 60,000 grills a year, all of which are manufactured overseas. So we use ports on both coasts. We use logistics warehouses on both coasts. Our East Coast is in Columbus, so it comes to Savannah and comes up to Columbus. We've got a little over 1 million square foot warehouse tied to Trumbull State there. So the short answer is yes, we give a lot of thought to logistics and how we move product, not just in and out of the state, but around the world. We have a very large European operation as well. It's not really my area of expertise. We have logistics divisions in all of the companies that focus on how we move product in and out and ultimately get it to our retailers. Our largest retailer is Lowe's. And they actually bring all of their product as direct import, which means they actually pick it up in China, never even gets on our boat or comes to our warehouse. And so that's about 70% of what we sell in the business is direct import through Lowe's. So we never touch the product. It comes off the line and onto a Lowe's boat. But it is interesting, you know, you start thinking about rail and all the conversations around the inland port that are happening in Georgia. We have been very fortunate in Columbus to just get a board seat on Georgia DOT board, which is great for everything down this direction, including
Good to know.
and starting to figure out how we got the way to manage that. You know, how we leverage that and how we deal with the growth that frankly, I mean, I'll give kudos to the state and what they have done in really growing the industry around the state. But it does come at a cost. You got to do that stuff one way or another. And so it's something that, whether it's I-14, which is getting a lot of press right now, or whatever the other alternatives might be, I think moving those products is really important to figure out how we do it better and more efficiently. It's only going to grow.
Time for one more question. Let's do it. Call. Bill. Have you seen Brad always be flying?
I do. Yeah, I think two things. I think it will always be a private company. Now, that may not apply to all divisions. And I think it will also always be chaired by a family member. When we moved away from family leadership at the CEO level, when Mark Olivier came in, that was a significant departure and by design. So we are now entirely professionally managed. We have one family member that works in any division of the company. She's a staff biologist at the farm, and she's actually married into the family. But other than that, I have 167 family members. None of them work in any division of the company. It's not because they're not allowed to. In fact, they're encouraged to. They don't. And so I do. I think the company will remain private and always under family leadership. You know, if you stop and think about the dynamics of a 138-year-old company with now 7 generations of family members, with family alive from 3rd generation, 7th generation, it's a pretty unique thing. You don't see family companies get much past 2 or 3, let alone 7. Now, 7th gen is 14 months old. She's really cute, but but it is an interesting dynamic that the family is, one, very, very proud of that. They are very protective. So I guess you never say never, but I have a hard time seeing where it is ever a conflict. And again, the strength of our balance sheet just allows us to make different decisions. And we were in investment conversation earlier today where we were talking about, you know, we're making investments. In my mindset, when we make an investment in a $50 or $60 million project, is I'm investing for somebody that's 14 months old. And how am I going to take care of her? Right? We've got to fund dividends for a very long time. So we invest in everything we do with a generational outlook on a quarterly or annual, which is a unique position, right? It gives us extreme luxury in weathering storms and things like COVID and everything else. There's no panic. Everybody takes a deep breath. There are ups and downs, but it's incredibly unique. And it's a great position to be in. So very blessed to get to work for that company.
Last question, Bill. Is there any discussion about Evergreen production of cardboard back in the US?
Yes. So there is obviously when initially when all of the tariffs were put in under the Trump administration, those tariffs cost us the first year they were in almost $50 million of revenue. And so that obviously triggered a very significant look at how we handle production, which was 100% for Char-Broil in China in one facility that was our construction partner. Today, 40% of our production is outside. And so that's happened in what, 3-4 years. Will it ever get back to the US? I think there is a possibility that we may see what we call parts and accessories. So, you know, aprons and spatulas and tongs and things like that. The reality of it is, I think the production on the grill side, the mass production side, you just can't cost to beat. Now, that doesn't mean that we wouldn't look at markets like Mexico or even Canada. In fact, the Danson's company that we just acquired, all of their grills are pellet fired. so little tiny wood pellets. They actually manufacture all of those in-house. We have 3 pellet mills and pellet mills as part of that acquisition, one of which is here. So there is a very concerted effort on how we start to move production of all types closer to home. Again, I would never say never, but bringing it back to the US is probably more of a long shot. But we are definitely moving out of China. So we don't build anything single family. So the single family project here will be sold to, we're talking to 3 different builders right now. So I can't answer that question. I don't know where they will price those. Our apartments, I would tell you, you have to understand, I live in a per square foot world, so I have to do quick math in my head to figure out what it is in absolute dollars. But they're probably somewhere between, I would say 900 on the low end, up to probably a couple thousand on the high end. And I'm going off the top there, so. Yeah. A lot of people do. It's, yeah, and it's an interesting point. I don't want to belabor, I'm sorry, but you make a good point. You asked a really good question because, back to the other comment about the housing shortage, what's driving a lot of it is affordable housing, right, or the lack thereof. It's a huge issue, and so it is. It's a stated goal of ours. So I have a real estate committee that's a subset of our board. They're all full board members, and we made a conscious decision 3 real estate committee meetings ago to really focus on how we start to provide affordable housing. If it's not an entire affordable housing project, how we provide affordable housing within projects. A lot of what we do, particularly when you look at projects like the Rapids in downtown, the cost just prohibit you from pricing that at a truly affordable rate. But if you get more suburban, you can bring those prices down, 900 or call it 1,000 or less. And then you really are in a much more affordable structure, which is a huge gap across the country. So it is a something we're very conscious of and we take very seriously. Well, thank you for that.
Program, appreciate you carrying the story with us, and more importantly, we appreciate your interest in the Rankin and Trick County, and absolutely seeing more of you guys in the years ahead. I will say, if you haven't been to downtown Columbus, I encourage you to check it out. It's a great evening, and weekend destination, and certainly you guys have a lot to do with that transformation. I want to give a big thank you to Jake for bringing us another good program. In your honor today, we'll be making a donation of Polio Plus, which is always this year, but like a polio. Let you know about the next few programs real quickly. September 13th, United Way Kickoff Luncheon. Hope to see you all there. September 20th is Danny Canso, the Director of Legislative Strategy for the Georgia Budget and Policy Institute. I know it sounds wonky, but it'll be a great program. It's very interesting. September 27th is District Governor Andre Marai, 100th anniversary. So please make the effort to be there. And then on October 4th, I have a program on literacy. Given to Cobra Yates and Ryan Wood James from the Atlanta State School in Cox. So again, thank you all for being here. Right there.